In this episode, John's sarcasm reaches an all-time high. And speaking of, Ross should really leave the humor to John. And also, use your knees, you woman. Thank you for coming back from our replay reviews. My name is Leah.
And my name is Kathy.
We are two friends who are here to replay, review, and analyze your favorite video games. And since Kathy has never seen the games before, it helps me view them through her fresh eyes, almost like I'm discovering them again for the first time.
We hope it'll be a similar experience for you.
Scene 1. John arrives at MacDougal's. He's all hot and bothered about some breakthrough he's had. Sounds like somehow Dutch is part of his breakthrough. He describes it as a win-win for both of them. To me, and tell me if you thought different, it sounded like what he was saying is Dutch is a good case study for reverting back to a savage spirit.
That's what it sounds like. But I also feel like the professor is saying there's one race that's superior to the other race.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, this professor is shooting up, so he's not quite with it.
An understatement. So they leave. I think John's just like, you know what, if I get Dutch out of this, whatever. I'm not sure what's happening, but
Yeah.
Nostos joins up too because he's set up a meeting between some of Dutch's men and MacDougal. Unsurprisingly, the meeting turns out to be a setup. Nostos gets shot right in the face, and John takes down all three men in the cabin before they race back to Blackwater.
Nasta's dying so quickly or so soon was something I was not expecting because proportionally we get a lot of the first third of the game about just the country in the Wild West, and then a big portion was about in Mexico. So it's like, great, we are here where there's some Native Americans. It's going to be great getting to see more of that. And no, he immediately dies. Proportional to everything that happened in Mexico. Yeah, that's crazy.
Only the innocent people die in this game. I mean, some people have died that deserve it. Maybe 3.
Well, I would rather the professor die than Nastas dying. And I feel like that's
100%.
unfair. This professor is literally on crack. He is just insane, and I think he would fit right in with any of the Outlast characters or in like the Inpatient.
Yeah, he could be a Dr. Traeger for sure. And yeah, poor Nostos, all he's trying to do is broker peace between these two sides, and he just gets shot in the face for it. And John's reaction is, holy shit, damn you, Dutch. So he's obviously saying Dutch is responsible for this. Is it because he is manipulating this gang of men, or what do you think Dutch has to do with this specifically?
Maybe that was just like, because of Dutch, I'm doing all these unnecessary things and putting people into worse positions or making people more anxious, and then innocent people are dying.
I think we need to do a so long for Nostos. Or Nastas, I'm not sure how to say it, but I kind of don't want to pronounce it the same way MacDougal does.
Yeah. Probably so long, Mother Respecter. He didn't really do anything wrong. He was loyal, and he was just caught in the crossfire.
And he held his cool so well.
Yeah.
Dealing with MacDougal and Ross.
He's a Mother Respecter. Just the patience alone.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that MacDougal? We should call him that. That MacDougal tried to take credit for carrying John down the mountain when Dutch shot at him. But it was all Nostos, and he did it with a knife injury. He didn't have to do that. He's a good person. Definitely a Mother Respecter. Later on, John checks back in with MacDougal, who's still in a panic after the shootout and is frantically packing his things. He says, I'm not cut out for this at all. And John says,
Nope.
No. And it's great. So I don't think anyone is surprised when MacDougal starts shooting up. And whilst shooting up, someone shoots in at them. Turns out to be Dutch. And he wants to kill them both.
I love how at this scene, watching in person, you jumped like with MacDougal, and that's the one and only time I think that you kind of got scared and I didn't. And
I know.
And I had to kind of keep it on the record because it's an accomplishment for me.
I must have just been focused deeply on something. And
Yeah.
then the gunshot just spooked me. I don't know.
I could see like kind of like a flinch in the corner of my eye, and I was like, Oh my gosh, Leah's scared before I get scared. That's a first. But moving on, this is the scene where Dutch is just, he's kind of hilarious because he's super cheery and just having a normal conversation with John while MacDougal is freaking out.
Let's discuss a little bit about what Dutch is saying.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of justifying his actions in a way and them wanting to kill John and MacDougal.
We're fighting for something a bit like you, only we're fighting for an idea, not just for ourselves.
He probably has some kind of ideology against the government or whatever party he's opposed to. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just him. He's a rebel and maybe he's trying to fight for something. And if it means that he's also stealing things along the way, that's why he's saying he's not a thief. He's just fighting for a cause.
What do you think killing John and MacDougal have to do with what they're fighting for?
He probably sees them as either backstabbers or traitors, or he's thinking that they're going to stop him from accomplishing his cause.
Dutch is threatening them, saying he wants them both, and I think he says to, like, send out MacDougal so we can end this. And this is when MacDougal is appealing to John, and he goes, please, sir, what are we going to do?
Lisa, what are we going to do?
I'm gonna hand you over to him and watch him tear you limb from limb.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Oh my god.
I was not expecting that kind of humor in it, and it's so refreshing to see John having his sense of humor now compared to when he was in Mexico. Well, I think there's some also great humor in the scene where immediately it cuts to a scene of a man and a woman just playing around in another bedroom, shimmying. And then
getting ready.
Yeah. And then immediately the professor gets caught not too soon afterwards. There's just a lot happening within back-to-back scenes.
I know. Dumb ass MacDougal, so confident we can go this way, immediately gets captured. But in the end, they are able to escape to Manzanita Post, where he takes the train. And I think John is pretty happy to have this guy out of his life.
Yeah, there is one thing I want all our viewers to know and our listeners to know is how cool of a shot you took. How you just shot the guy behind MacDougal when he's held hostage.
No, Deadeye. You know what I think it was, though? I didn't give a shit if I shot MacDougal by accident. There was no pressure at all.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive, though.
John meets back up with Ross and Fordham, but before we get inside, I came in kind of hot on the horse, and I jumped off while still in motion, and my horse continues on for a few steps and crashes into some guy, and the way he says, "The hell?" It's just fantastic. Anyway, he presses Ross and Fordham again about getting his family back, but they say their demands have not yet been met. We get a lot of really deep, I suppose, conversations here from Ross. Is there anything you wanted to highlight?
Yes. So I love how John's like, I'm done. I did what you asked. Give me my family back. Mm-hmm. This is where I understand in those previous episodes that we had a conversation how you sided with John saying he's a desperate man. I don't think I've ever seen him as desperate and how much he's ready to break until this scene where I now understand that sense of desperation and why he's willing to do what he did in Mexico. I don't agree with it. I wish he had still had more backbone. But this is the first time where I've seen that just he's tired, he's about to break, and then he has to listen to Ross just being theatric and dramatic. So I'm like, okay, I get where you come from. Now that I've seen this scene, it makes sense of what we watched before.
He just can't really afford to take any risks. But speaking of Ross, I guess he's explaining to John the difference between what Dutch says he is and what he actually is. He uses the metaphor of like a nature novelist and specifically flowers. So the quote is about Dutch.
Rather than just loving the flowers and the animals and the harmony between man and beast, he shoots people in the head for money and disagreeing with them.
He's a goddamn killer.
Now, I'm not a great intellect, but the metaphysical leap from admiring the flower to shooting a man in the head because he doesn't like the flower is a leap too far.
I feel like I should know what he's talking about, which I'm assuming it's about the difference between Dutch shooting and killing someone, but then compared to the police doing the same thing. But I don't know if I'm on the right track.
And that's kind of where it goes next. He says, while the rules may not be perfect, they're not so bad. Civilization may be dull, but the alternative, Mr. Marston, is hell. I wrote, he has a good point, but also I love John's response, which is basically like, what the hell are you talking about? And he also says something about, but it's okay for you to kidnap someone's wife and child. And Ross is like, the rules may not be perfect, but they are what they are.
One other frustrating thing is in this entire conversation, they make themselves sound so superior that they don't need John's help, yet they haven't been able to catch Dutch, yet they criticize everything about John and Dutch.
And them mentioning the harmony between man and beast, it's like they're using John as the beast. Like, you still have to have the harmony because the beast is still there, but they're using a beast to catch a beast instead of doing it themselves. They're definitely being hypocritical, and he even admits it. Too bad. What are you going to do about it? It's like we have the upper hand.
And unfortunately, they're right.
And that's what I find so compelling about Ross as a villain. I hate the man, but sometimes some of what he says is not wrong. You know, he has a point, and John's no saint, so that's why it's easier to drive home those points, but you just love to hate him.
I think it's also disgusting how they talk about Abigail.
Yeah.
It's so bad. I did not like watching that scene.
It's just like they're trying to rile him up. They're like, give me a reason, John, to shoot you right here.
Which I so wish John could punch them in the face, but it wouldn't get them anywhere.
I know. So they all leave to end Dutch once and for all. After some very long-winded shootouts, the agents say they need to go after Dutch tonight before he slips away for good. John pushes them, saying, what if I refuse? But they respond, saying that the last person they have to appeal to Dutch is Abigail. John says that won't be necessary. So we see again how John just does not have any control or any other options. So they're riding to Dutch's hideout, and there's some conversation. I love John saying, don't speak to me. But the line that stood out to me is Fordham saying, there's always someone watching. Did that hit you when you heard it?
I just thought that meant, like, now that he's back in this area, that they'll always keep an eye out. So telling John, like, because that's the beast comparison. They're like, don't step out of line because we can easily kidnap your wife again. But I think that that's too shallow of what he's saying. I think he means something else.
I almost think he said too much there. And we'll talk about it at the end of the game, but I think he let John get to him a little bit, and he spilled a few too many beans. So they do arrive at Dutch's hideout, and a fight begins. John chases after Dutch until he finds himself backed into a corner, or I guess a cliff. The two of them have their one-on-one.
And they have, I think it's, again, part of John's sarcasm is something that Dutch also shares, because he's like, we gotta stop meeting like this. And Dutch looks pretty sad in the situation. I think he knows there's no escape this time.
I agree. He says, I've got a plan, John. John responds, you've always got a plan, Dutch. And he says, this is a good one. And he drops his gun, and John lowers his in response.
It is pretty sad, though, because Dutch, I can't remember if he says this before or after, but he says his whole life, all he did was fight, and he can't fight anymore. But then there's also, like, a paradox, because he's saying that he can't fight his own nature.
The whole quote is, we can't always fight nature, John. We can't fight change. We can't fight gravity. We can't fight nothing. My whole life, all I ever did was fight. John says, then give up, Dutch. And Dutch's response is, but I can't give up neither. I can't fight my own nature. And then John says, then I have to shoot you. So I think this does tie back into the man versus beast and the nature conversation. Dutch recognizes what he is in this moment.
He would die for fighting for whatever cause he mentioned in the earlier scene than to surrender to John, who is going to be that biggest barrier to whatever cause he's fighting. It's kind of like if Reyes got captured, maybe Reyes would kill himself. I don't know.
Dutch then says, when I'm gone, they'll just find another monster. They have to because they have to justify their wages.
The whole beast conversation is similar to monster. My biggest thing is we're letting these police officers decide who's considered as the monster and who's not. And isn't there any kind of justification or criteria of what makes a monster? Because we saw in Mexico how DeSanta was saying that Reyes is a monster, and then you hear the other way, it goes the other way around. So maybe this is just, again, a paradox saying that you say that the police are trying to find these monsters and they're going to justify their wages by saying that you pay us and then we take care of these, when in fact maybe it's the police that are monsters.
And that's kind of what this game highlights, and I think we should come back to that at the end. I guess Dutch has said all he needs to say. His last line is, our time has passed, John. And with that, he falls backwards, killing himself.
What a cool way to go out. You didn't let anyone capture you. And he doesn't let John, someone who is, quote unquote, beneath him, be the one to take him down.
I'm not surprised that this is how he goes out, but I find it interesting. It's still not a win, you know? Like, he recognizes when he says our time has passed that it's over for him. And so I get ending it this way rather than at the hands of someone else. But it still kind of is at the hands of someone else because they backed him into this corner.
He made sure that he wouldn't get brought back into prison and maybe tortured by the police, or he wouldn't be hung in front of a public. So he chose this way of how he knows that he's going to die either way. He just gets to continue his control over his own fate.
And I get that. I just think the other side of it is this isn't where he wanted to end up, I guess. But I also think he doesn't want to live in the new civilization that Ross was talking about. So it's an interesting one. But I think we should do a so long for him. What are your thoughts about Dutch?
I think there's multiple things. I don't know him enough. We barely see him in the game besides what we hear from other people. And I'm starting to question how much of what other people are saying is true. So I have some hesitancy, but we do know that he left John for dead. He's definitely not a mother respecter. I would say just to the mother side of the neutral spectrum.
I think he's a mother too. And the biggest thing for me is when Nastas mentions that his gang is pretty much made up of young men from the reservation now. A lot of them died for this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like, for what? You know, is it just Dutch's last ditch effort to get out alive, to beat the system?
Okay.
And he just used people as his personal army, essentially.
I agree with you, mother.
I get the appeal of Dutch. Even still, and at least from John's perspective, I get it. Yeah, I think John hates him, but he also kind of represents freedom in a way. I don't...
How?
Okay, so here's my question, like, from John's perspective. Would fighting the Pinkertons with Dutch feel better than being forced to fight Dutch by the Pinkertons? And my follow-up to that is his family may be the only thing keeping him from wondering this, from asking himself this question. Who would he rather be fighting here?
Number 2, I agree with you that his family has a huge role in this, but going back to number 1, I think it depends on what free will looks like. If he's fighting with Dutch and he says, hey, Dutch, I'm actually not comfortable with this, I'm going to sit this one out, does he have the ability to do that? Like, is it his choice to fight the Pinkertons, or is Dutch forcing him? And from what I think, it's that Dutch does a really good job of convincing John, but ultimately John makes a lot of the decisions on his own, maybe, versus being forced to do what you want without any free will. So I guess my answer is whatever side that allows John to make his own decision instead of being forced to do things, that's the better side. And if it means against the Pinkertons, then that's it.
And that's the question, because when I say, does he represent freedom in a way, it's because Dutch had his own set of rules. They weren't complying with the civilization that Ross was talking about. So there's freedom there, but how much freedom is there? Is it just constrained to Dutch's idea of civilization? And I think that at the end of the day, his family is what drives him to make his decisions, abandoning that idea of what freedom they had fighting against civilization. You just have to sacrifice that to not be, being hunted down. You have to give one up to survive in the other, I guess. Oh gosh. Okay, Ross. So John is down at the base of the mountain looking at Dutch's dead body. Ross approaches and uses John's gun to shoot him and says, looks better in the report that way.
Is it because that they hadn't maybe a deal in writing say that if John captures Dutch, whether he's dead or alive, that relieves John of his wrongdoings with the law? Like that clears it out? Or is it that it just means that John killing him clarifies the police didn't do it, so it's no one's fault. It's a bounty killing another man. It's all good. So I guess, which one is it, do you think?
I see it as, because we hear Ross reference, I'm going to get a medal out of this when this is all over. So I see it as him, if we can keep using the nature reference, he's more likely to get accolades if he uses one beast to kill the other beast. I think it would demonstrate that he has control over John. Because why bring John into it at all if he's just going to shoot him himself?
Well, why even need to shoot him? Like, we know he's dead for sure, so why do we need that extra bullet?
To prove that he was able to
Okay.
control John into shooting someone he loved.
Yeah. Okay.
Even though he didn't. Why would Ross risk his life making this joke?
I'm so done with Ross. At this point, I was so mad.
So John says, where's my family? Can I go see my family now? And Ross says, your wife was killed in a prison riot last week. And John just points the gun right at his head and he's like, I was only joking. They're at your farm.
I wish John was quicker with pulling the trigger.
What an idiot. Why would you, why?
So stupid. Ross, just everything he does, I hate him.
I agree. I really hate him so much. From his mustache to his hat, I hate all of it. John arrives home and we meet Abigail. First reactions to her?
I like how normal this conversation between the two of them are. She starts smacking John, but she's happy. She's happy that John's here. It just feels normal that's how I think a lot of people would have reacted.
Yeah, she's afraid, and that's manifesting as anger when she first meets him again, because she thinks that he might have gone back to Bill and Dutch and sort of abandoned them changing their ways. But after he assures her, no, that's not what happened. It's over. She is very relieved. So you can understand her reaction. It comes across as a little why are you hitting him at first?
Yeah.
But when you get into the dialogue, you understand, she's just
Afraid. And then his son runs over, and John's pretty happy to see his son after could have lost them both, right?
Yeah.
And then it just immediately it kind of returns back to a normal family life. And I think that's really sweet.
And then Uncle walks over.
With his moldy beard.
Oh, dude, clean that thing. So Uncle has not been picking up the slack very well while they've been gone. And they lost all the cattle. So in the morning, John and Jack ride to McFarland Ranch to buy some. John catches up with Drew and Bonnie. He and Jack head out with their new herd of cattle. Why do we have another cow mission?
They want to torture you one last time. It is great to have that full circle to see John getting cattle from the McFarlands, because we saw in the beginning, this is what the dream is. If I come out the other side, I'll come back to grab some cattle. And he does.
I agree. It's nice to see that he's gotten something out of this whole ordeal. He's made friends and people he can trust, and that's something I'm not sure he's ever really had. They have to fight off some rustlers, but they do make it back home with their cattle. And this is when John walks around his property, and we run into the strange man yet again up on a hill overlooking his ranch.
Ain't this a beautiful spot?
Sure. What are you doing here?
My accounts. I'm an accountant.
Is that so?
In a way.
Reactions to this part of the conversation so far?
I don't know what being an accountant is, but how's this guy traveling everywhere?
You're an accountant. You know what being an accountant
Well,
is.
I mean, like, for him.
I know, I'm kidding.
Yeah. This is not any kind of accountant I've seen before who dresses like a wannabe Abe Lincoln kind of dude.
What's your name?
You know, it's the darndest thing. I can't remember.
Tell me your damn name and where you know me from.
Well, I know you're from Mexico. I know you're from back out west. Hell, I know you from all over.
Tell me your name or I won't be responsible for my actions.
Oh, but you will. You will be responsible.
This is a fine spot.
See you around, cowboy.
Damn you!
Yes, many have.
I want to start getting into this, but I think we're going to save a lot of our reactions and theories for the summary episode, so we'll come back to it. Sometime later, John and Abigail look back at their past and where they are now. It's a very deep conversation until they're interrupted by crows. I love that John doesn't really care about the crows and is just trying to eat the food out of the pot with his fingers until Abigail makes him go deal with them.
And it's so weird to see John this flirty that we've only seen him being serious.
So John takes care of the crows by shooting like 60 of them. And then Abigail grills him about Bonnie after receiving a telegram from her. Also, how did John get fame from shooting crows on his own property?
Doesn't make sense.
Anyway, the telegram is asking for help. The county supply of corn has been lost and they need some from John. Abigail's pretty suspicious, though.
It's really cute how jealous she is.
Although I do love how Abigail, despite being a little jealous or suspicious, is like, well, you have to help them. They saved your life. But he gets the wagon ready to go, and then Abigail runs out last minute to tag along. I have a couple notes from their drive on the way there. The first one is when she's grilling John some more about Bonnie.
What does she look like?
I don't know. Pretty normal, I suppose.
Normal? What? Normal like me?
No. Normal as in 2 eyes, mouth, nose, that kind of normal.
It's pretty good. When they're talking about Bill and Dutch, I like how Abigail reminds John that they left him there when John starts to defend them. I think there's still part of John where, had he not been under the pressure, he would have just left Dutch and Bill alone. Maybe even side with them.
But yeah, he says when Dutch went crazy, Bill took it hard. For a while, we all thought we found something right, a better way to live, but it was just a lie. So you can see why it'd be hard to turn against them, because it seemed like they all wanted the same thing. But Abigail says about it being a lie, you saw it before they did. You knew the truth, John, and they hated you for it.
What happened? Like, what kind of truths did he see? What pushed him to want to leave?
Bonnie and Abigail meet. I like their dynamic and the way they team up on John.
And Bonnie's not really threatening to the point where Abigail feels like she needs to play or needs to be defensive about Bonnie. She doesn't see her as a threat. But I think that shot in the end when they're leaving and Bonnie's just out on the road, it confirms that Bonnie had a thing for John, and Abigail was spot on with her teasing afterwards that Bonnie had feelings for him.
I know. My note's like, poor Bonnie. The way she's just hanging her head and like swaying her feet in the dirt. They head back to the ranch, and John says it's over, talking about their past, everything they've been through. And Abigail says, "Do you really believe that?" And he responds, "We have to. It's the only way we'll ever have a future. The life we led, it doesn't just go away," she says. It's never over.
I think Abigail's smart and John is, again, continues to be naive that he thinks it could be truly over. If I was John, I would have just packed up my stuff and just left the farm and moved somewhere else. Or moved to Mexico. He has some friends there.
And some enemies, though.
Yes, but it's probably safer than being a sitting duck in a farm where you know the government knows where you are.
I do like John's line, though, of, "Sometimes I think I was the stupid one for believing I could get out. Maybe Dutch, Bill, and Javier were just being honest with themselves." I think there's some truth to that, at least for those three, but not necessarily for John, because I do think that John wanted to change. And then to follow it up, he says, "Maybe we can't change, but we gotta try for Jack's sake."
I like that. I just personally, my own self, as a realist, I don't think that you can continue to move forward without frequently looking over your shoulder if I went through what John went through. We've seen it enough of John, how naive he is, that it doesn't surprise me that he's being like this. I just wish he could have done something. I know the game already had his ending for him, but I wish he would have been able to be more careful, and that could have changed how the game ends.
When I consider the ending of the game, I would say he's not so much naive as just being hopeful. But I think we'll get into that. We just need the information at the end of the game. So they get back home. The next day, John takes a very reluctant Jack out hunting. And Rufus helps us hunt.
Rufus is the best. Jack annoys me.
Oh, yeah. He's like, "You left, you're gonna leave again." John is like, "I didn't want to leave."
Yeah.
They made me. So yeah, Jack's very grumpy, but he does end up enjoying himself. John forces Uncle to help him herd the cattle out to pasture. I forgot about this one. I thought we were done with the cows. During which, some outlaws try to rob a train, which scares the cattle. And John takes down the criminals and is thanked by the engineer and the passengers.
Can we talk about how stupid the cattle is to just launch themselves at a moving train?
They want to be here even less than I did playing that. But the funny thing, it's kind of hilarious when they crash into the train, fall over, and then just pop. They just pop back up. Yeah. And they're fine. They're fine. You know, only hurt a little bit. Also, how ironic that John is now taking down outlaws that are robbing trains when almost certainly that's exactly what he used to do.
And it's why it makes him so good at taking them down, because he knows how they think.
Okay, so after the cows, John checks back in with Jack. He helps him improve his shooting. Jack is in a mood. Of course. John then says that wolves have been after the herd, so they leave to go hunt them down. So after this, Jack's all amped up again. He's like, "I could go kill a bear." And John is like, "No, you can't. Never leave the ranch without checking in with me." But lo and behold, the next day, Uncle runs up to John and he's like, "Jack left to go track down a grizzly bear." Good boy Rufus locates Jack, who's hiding behind a rock with a bear nearby. I believe the bear has killed his horse, so he's kind of stuck. He's kind of cornered. John kills the bear and the two of them start riding back home. John is grilling Jack. He's like, "You should know better. I told you not to do this. What were you thinking?"
And then Jack's like, "I'm not stupid," in that annoying teenage way. And John's like, "You could have fooled me."
Not stupid.
You could have fooled me.
I'm just waiting for a chance to use that.
Yeah.
After this, after Jack is safely back home, Uncle and John break some wild horses. Oh, Uncle. Every time. Well, I think actually he only says it the last time John breaks a horse. But he's like, "Use your knees, you woman." And he says it like every 5 seconds, a total of like 5 or 6 times. And it's so funny.
And it's just in the background. You don't even notice it unless you're actively listening. Yeah. And it's pretty darn good.
Well, that's all I had for scene 5. You have anything else?
Nope.
All right. Final scene of the game. So John finds Jack working in the barn, and they're having a chat. They talk about writing a book, and I think kind of like about John changing. And Jack is like, I could name my book The Day John Marston Stopped Shooting. Which I just think is the coldest, hardest line they could have dropped in right here. And then obviously people know where we're going with this, but another line, they're talking about airplanes, and Jack says one of those machines can turn men into angels. And John says, in a thinking, brooding manner, one of them machines can turn men into angels. And I'm like, in this instance, is that machine a gun?
A Gatling gun specifically?
So Uncle's looking through binoculars and calls out for John. John takes a look and does not like whatever he sees. He tells Jack, run inside and lock the doors. And then he hugs Jack. A nice long hug. And I think he knows what's coming at this point.
I think so too. And I'm wondering, would it have been better for John to tell Jack what's going on or not?
I don't think he sees that there's time.
Okay.
But I can't say for sure. Then he says to Uncle, well, old man, looks like things is about to be settled once and for all. And a shootout begins. The army has been sent to attack John.
That's crazy. So much people for just one man.
Jack soon refuses to stay put inside anymore and picks up a gun. At this point, they're all 3 men are outside shooting, and this is when Uncle gets shot and dies.
I was not expecting that.
With his last breaths, he says, you take Jack and Abby, take them and don't worry about me. So long for Uncle, right?
Yeah.
He's a little crotchety, but I think his heart is in the right place.
Mm-hmm. I'd say between neutral and mother respecter, he was very lazy, not very helpful.
I was just going to say, maybe he's a lazy mother respecter.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. A lazy mother respecter. Doesn't move anything forward, but he died fighting for John's family.
Yeah. He cares about them, but he doesn't want to work very hard. Well, John listens to Uncle and gets his family to the barn and on a horse. He says, I'll catch up. Then they exchange I love yous and they ride away.
And then look on John's face, though. My feelings watching this, I knew that there's a second game, had no context for what it would be. So I was thinking like, okay, he's not going to die because there's a second game and he's going to be the lead. I'm pretty sure he's not going to die. And then I saw the look on his face and I'm like, oh crap. I don't know if he's going to make it.
He stares after them for only a moment, then turns to the door. Peeking out, he sees a lineup of men aimed right at him. With a sigh, he throws open the doors, shoots as many as he can, which for me is not very many because I don't use Deadeye.
Yeah.
So ruined the cinematic a little bit there. My apologies. So he shoots as many men as he can before taking an ungodly amount of bullets. A bit overkill, right?
Mm-hmm. Is there a way in the game to avoid John dying? Like, if you're really good at Deadeye, do you think you could have just killed them all?
Many have tried. None have succeeded.
Okay. In this part, John knowing what was waiting for him on the other side, he should have just walked around and take like a sneak attack or something.
I know. My only thing, and we'll talk about this later because this is also a summary topic, but my only line that I'll leave you with for your question is, does he know the only freedom for his family is his death?
Ooh, let me write some notes. Not gonna lie, I was devastated watching the scene. I was not expecting that because part of me thought he was going to be the main character in Red Dead Redemption 2 because I didn't know anything about it. I thought there were 6 games. I was so wrong about that. But I was thinking that, oh, he's going to be in the next 4 games or so. I thought it was going to be a Kiryu situation.
Then I never corrected you.
I know, which is making it things worse because it hit me hard because I did not expect this to end this way.
I wanted it to hit you hard, though. Imagine being 13, 14-year-old Leah. Not only did you play through the game, you also did all the stranger missions. You spent like 2 or 3 times longer with John. And then this happens.
And it's shortened too, our gameplay. But I was wondering why after he catches or kills Dutch or forces Dutch to die, there's still an hour of gameplay left. And I was confused and I was like, oh, we're going to get a happily ever after. But I'm like, but that's still only like 15 minutes of the game. We still got 45. I just didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side because I was confident he was going to survive for the next game. And I was so wrong.
I know, because you don't really trust the ending when we're at Dutch. We're like, this doesn't feel right. And when I played it for the first time, I thought he was going to get back to his ranch and his family was going to be dead.
We've been having this conversation about how worried I was whether or not Abigail and Jack were going to survive.
Well, first of all, I have to say, Ross.
I hate him.
But I think we got to do a so long for John.
Hands down, mother respecter. No need to explain. I think it's pretty obvious.
Mother respecter. Yeah, he's got a troubled past. But he was brought into that gang as a child. What else did he know? You know, he didn't know a whole lot else, and he still made the effort to turn his life around, which isn't that what we want criminals to do? I think he was a little messed up by what happened in the gang, and he did some messed up things, but at the end of the day, he was trying to repay for all of that. And that's more than a lot of people do, so I think he has to be a mother respecter.
I'm trying to hold back on my summary stuff. I'm like trying to keep my mouth shut because I keep staring at it in my notes, and I'm like, can't say that. So I'm gonna let you cue us to the next section.
Okay. So we then cut to Abigail and Jack, who heard the gunshots and decide to race back, which, thank you. I'm so glad they went back.
Me too. It would have hurt me even more if Jack was like, no, we gotta listen to what Dad says. The one and only time he actually listens to what his dad says. And I'm glad he disobeys and brings his mom and him back, which still continues to hurt me.
Yep. And they don't like what they find when they get there. But they bury him sometime later above the ranch. And should I just keep going?
Keep going.
To the time jump? We cut to Jack. He's grown up now. He looks at his father's grave, then turns and walks off. And this is when we see that Abigail has a grave too. It's dated 1914, so it's been 3 years or so.
3 years is not enough time to go Jack looking from blonde hair to black hair, I think he now has.
Definitely was never blonde. I don't know why.
Wait, hold on. I don't know why I keep imagining Jack as blonde. Oh, it was dark. I don't know why. I know it was dark, but I don't know why I kept imagining him as blonde.
Yeah.
Okay, but
you
that
should
doesn't...
definitely not Google anything Red Dead Redemption related, though.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
You're gonna get spoilers.
I closed it real quick. But why does Jack look Mexican? He looks really similar to Reyes.
It's funny you say this, but it's weird that you bring up Reyes because people have a theory that he's actually Javier's son, but that theory's pretty much been debunked based on the timelines of when people joined the gang. So it's pretty well and confirmed that he is John's son. He rides to Blackwater where he finds a man who looks like a government agent. He questions him about the whereabouts of Edgar Ross. The man responds, he won himself a chest full of medals. I think he went and retired about a year ago. Last he heard, he and his wife were at Lake Don Julio.
I think I know where this is going, Jack. I think I know what you want to do.
So Jack finds Ross's wife at the lake cabin. She tells him that he and his brother went hunting on the river in Mexico. She says he's a sensitive man. And Jack responds, I'm sure your husband will be just fine.
Ross's wife, is she dumb?
Yes. Okay, so we're back in Mexico. Jack finds Ross. I love this. Ross says, do I know you? Which really, I feel like is a tie to the stranger mission. So we'll react to that in the summary.
My name is Jack Marston. You knew my father.
I see. I remember your father.
I've come for you, Ross.
And you, boy, have sure as shit found me.
You killed my father.
Your father killed himself with the life he lived.
Sure, except that he wasn't living that life anymore.
And Ross knew he wanted out.
So we duel him. Jack kills him.
So satisfying.
So satisfying. But we have to talk about the way Jack looks at the gun.
My thought is that that's probably the same gun that killed Dutch that Ross used. And I'm thinking that that whole report, I don't know how Ross reported it, but saying that maybe this was the murder weapon and therefore John should die because he shouldn't have killed him, is going to be that murder weapon in that report is the same thing that's going to end Ross. What he started to end John's life is the same weapon that ends his life. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. I went a different route.
Oh, okay.
So I have 2 questions. Well, my first question is Jack an outlaw now? Because he looks at this gun like it stirs something within him, right, after he shoots this guy. But then I think deeper about it, and I remember on one of the hunting trips he went on with John, he says, well, I love it, because he's like, can I ask you a question? John's like, sure. Are you a murderer? And John's like, what?
Oh, can I ask you something?
Of course!
You a murderer?
What?
That place where they held us. Ma shouted at a guard one time, and he yelled that you were a murderer.
Maybe. But I live my life believing there's a difference between killing and murdering.
And so when he's looking at the gun, I see it 2 ways as what I said. He's either an outlaw now because he realized I kind of liked doing that, or he's pondering what John said and thinking, did I kill him or did I murder him? Because he's kind of deserving of being killed, right? And this is probably Jack's first kill, and I think that he now understands what John meant when he was saying that.
That's a lot more poetic than what I came up with. I mean, now that you say it, though, my idea of the same weapon that ended John is a weapon that ends Ross, who started everything. It makes sense to me. And then taking also into consideration that Jack probably understands what his dad was saying. It's not murder, it's revenge/killing. And I can justify that.
I also like taking yours a little bit different. John's son, who looks like him except for the facial hair, wearing John's hat, John's gun belt, his holster, using John's gun to kill Ross, is kind of poetic in that way, where it's like not necessarily John killed Ross, but because John changed his ways, everything he left behind is what ends up biting Ross in the ass. And so it's kind of like, even though Ross was the good guy, the police officer, someone changing their ways to become good ultimately takes down someone using good to justify their evil actions.
Yeah, I feel like we circled back around it for both that storyline about the gun and also the quick 1-2 line about explaining the difference between murder and killing someone.
This game drops so many quotes that come back later, but you have to be looking like we are to really feel their full impact, or you have to play the game multiple times.
And you said so too while watching this in person, and it goes back to why we're doing this podcast, is you're picking up on things that you may have not already seen because you're watching it with me, with my sort of lens where I'm still confused. Like, I watched this without knowing that John was going to be dead, and so everything I'm seeing is in a totally different light.
And that's why I love doing the summary episodes, because we have time to react and absorb everything, and then we ask each other questions that make you go back and look at things in a different perspective. And I'm really excited for next week.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to say some more stuff, but I don't want to because I just need to shut up and not ruin our summary episode for either of us.
I feel so horrible saying I'm glad that you were like
In
sad
pain.
and in pain at this ending, but I so am.
I'm still not quite over it, and I still don't know how I feel about it because I'm still a bit in shock.
I'm not over it either. If it makes you feel better.
And it's been 14 years for you.
I'll never be over it.
With that, I'm going to call it Audacity on 1, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to send in any questions, comments, or game suggestions. You can find all our contact info on our website, replayreviewspod.com, or contact us directly through our site.
Did we completely miss something? Are we way off the mark? Or you just want us to take a deeper look at anything from the game? We'll tackle any topics you all want to hear in our season wrap-up episode.
We also have a Reddit where we discuss anything we're curious about. Go take a look and let us know what you're thinking. Our theme music is Condemned by Eggy Toast. They'll play you out, and we'll be back next week with the summary episode.